Well, the conflict in the Middle East is again featuring prominently on the front pages. This is the Telegraph's take. UK forces not up to defending Israelis. We'll be right back.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, our top stories. Israel is weighing up its options on how to retaliate to Iran's huge missile strike on the country, saying its enemies will soon understand and claiming it could strike anywhere in the Middle East. Meanwhile, its assault on Lebanon continues, with the Israeli military saying 8 soldiers have been killed since the ground operation started. And the row grows over political donations. Sir Keir Starmer has paid back more than £6,000 worth of gifts and hospitality received since he became Prime Minister, including payment for Taylor Swift tickets. Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the former Conservative special advisor, Anita Boateng. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome both. So let's take a look at what is on some of those front pages. Now, Iran must pay the price. The Metro focuses on Israel's potential revenge after missiles rained on their territory. The Eye says Israel vows rapid revenge strike on Iran and adds that the US will not support Netanyahu's attack on Iran's nuclear sites. The Telegraph reports on claims that UK forces will not be able to protect Israel from Iranian ballistic missiles. The Times writes that 8 Israeli soldiers have died during a series of ambushes inside Lebanon. The Express has a warning from security chiefs that the conflict in the Middle East could lead to terror attacks in the UK. The Prime Minister paying back £6,000 worth of freebies makes the front of the Mail. The Financial Times writes about OpenAI asking investors to avoid backing rivals as it raises billions in funds. The Sun pictures the Princess of Wales hugging a teenage girl who is battling cancer. The Mirror has that story too. And The Star has a story about the Line of Duty actress Anna Maxwell Martin and her fear of sandwiches. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Anita Boateng. Thank you both for being with us. OK, well, let's start with that story, which is obviously making the front pages of pretty much all the papers. Let's start by looking at The Times, page 1. 8 Israeli soldiers die in battle with Hezbollah, and it's an ambush of the IDF troops sent into Lebanon to dismantle the tunnel network, because, of course, we've seen a lot of bombardment of Lebanon, but now we are also seeing effectively a ground offensive. Anita.
Yes, I mean, this is the reporting of what we've been seeing all day, really, which is, a series of ambushes set by militants, and there were 8 of its soldiers killed, as you just said, and Hezbollah obviously claiming that this is a big victory, and it could perhaps suggest the dangers of it reporting the Times of moving into this long entrenched Hezbollah territory. And you and I have discussed many times before the kind of strength of Hezbollah and how they're kind of dug in a different kind of beast as an organisation to some of the others that Israel may be facing in terms of incoming, for instance, from some of the rogue operatives that operate in Iraq, for instance. And so here, what you're seeing is, clearly what looks like almost hand-to-hand combat. And the question that remains is, what happens next? What is that retaliation, given we are talking about attempts by Israel so far to dismantle infrastructure that's obviously been met by these kind of dozens of Hezbollah operatives opening fire? What does that mean for deaths? What does that mean for escalation? What does that mean for wider regional conflict? How could this spiral out of control? Those are all the questions in my mind tonight.
Okay, just before I come to you, let's look at the Metro, which, of course, leads with that front page of the Metro. Now Iran must pay the price. And here Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, saying there will be a price to pay. Yeah,
that Times story had 20 Hezbollah fighters, as they're described in the Times, who were also killed in that conflict. But it's very different to Hamas. And you can decapitate Hezbollah and assassinate Hassan Nasrallah and the leadership, but there will be groups of heavily armed and trained and dedicated fighters on the ground.
Territory now.
Well, Israel found that when it invaded in 1982, and was it left in 2000? I think
yes.
It did, but suffered a lot of casualties. Hezbollah suffered more. More Lebanese died.
And
nevertheless,
civilians, of course.
That's always the horror of it. But no, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is now talking incredibly fiercely because he's gone for broke when you kill, assassinate Nasrallah. There's been assassinations of Iranians too.
Senior generals in the
absolutely,
past, yeah.
No. And what next? Because Joe Biden has said no, he wouldn't support that attack on the nuclear facilities. Now they will be incredibly heavily guarded, I would suspect, and probably very deep down as well. But where it goes, I don't know. It's incredibly dispiriting. That's what it is, and it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better, whatever better means.
And we have talked for almost a year now about the risks of escalation, and it seems like the conflict is going only in one direction. And so in the Metro piece, it kind of really talks about that, as Kevin said, the sort of what happens next, and Israel potentially launching a massive kind of air attack. And then if you're kind of engaged in this close range combat, and then obviously Iran says we're going to respond. They talk about delivering a crushing response. Yeah. Where does this lead? And, you know, there are some targets which would be, I'm sure, difficult to hit, but there are also ones that could be quite deep into territory. And so are you targeting nuclear sites? Are you targeting bases? Are you targeting oil? Like, all of these things have within them some risks. And also, what are the proxies that are backing and are allied to Iran that could then be drawn into this conflict? So we can very clearly see a kind of neat line, and it's very difficult to imagine a scenario in which things now de-escalate. And there are continued calls for, you know, ceasefires and all the rest of it. But it's very hard to see, particularly where the US is, that happening.
Those calls ignored by everybody. No.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it was for the ceasefires, it's all fighting.
Absolutely. And the US also basically asking not to hit nuclear sites and asking for a calibrated and proportional response. But we'll see what happens there. Let's take a look at the Telegraph. And their line, are UK forces up to helping the Israelis? Give us the details of this story, Kevin.
Yeah, and this by the defence editor is quite remarkable, that the RAF Typhoons flown from the base in Cyprus, RAF Akrotiri, can't shoot down ballistic missiles. So they couldn't do anything. They can shoot down drones and target cruise missiles, but they can't hit ballistic missiles because they can leave the atmosphere and they go much faster. And nor can the Royal Navy's Type 45 destroyers. They can't shoot down ballistic missiles, although they're going to get some system that will. So we heard, yes, Britain was involved, but it seems almost flying around watching what's happening rather than taking part.
Because that's what's interesting about the attack yesterday as opposed to April 13th, how much quicker that the ballistic missiles arrived, which are obviously potentially harder to intercept.
Yes, of course. And not just that, but also their sheer number. So obviously you had the Iron Dome, you know, play its part, but you've got here, and the Telegraph quotes a retired Navy commander saying our involvement was underwhelming, and talking about the sort of underinvestment and funding given where we are in terms of defence from these T-45 destroyers. So I think there's certainly some lobbying going on in the form of this paper about Britain's defence capabilities and ability to participate and support its allies where necessary.
There'll be some people relieved, because some people will fear that Britain will be sucked into a war in the Middle East. Just looks, according to this report, not capable of doing that when it comes to ballistic missiles.
Yeah, and one final thing on that is really that, but when it comes to Gaza, there has been some vocal and quite disquiet from the UK and the US when it comes to how Israel has done that. When it comes to Iran, however, or Hezbollah, it's a little more simple. And so that's where you might see some pressure applied in terms of the ability to ensure that we remain a strong enough threat, effectively, to some of those forces.
But let's take a look at the Express. They've got a headline here, which, obviously everyone has concern and worry and empathy for the Middle East, but this kind of shows how it could hit us here. So security chiefs fear rise in terror attacks in the UK. Anita, what are the details of this story?
Yeah, so basically it's the Community Security Trust, which is a kind of charity to keep Jewish people safe. It says that there might be some lone extremists that are galvanised by the events of what's happening in the Middle East to commit atrocities against British Jews. And obviously the most important thing to remember, of course, is that we're 5 days away from the anniversary of the 7th October attacks. And what could we see in the context of that is what he's really talking about. And it's one of the challenging things throughout this entire conflict, which is it's not just a war that's happening, in a faraway land. It really has huge ramifications and huge connections directly from people in Britain, and it has made a huge difference, I think, to the debates we're having as a society about this conflict.
You see the CST people often, if you go past a Jewish school or a synagogue, will be smartly dressed, mainly men. Sometimes women know, and they are there for security because there has been a surge, unfortunately, in anti-Semitic incidents in the UK. But we're coming up to the anniversary of the Hamas October 7th pogrom. That'll be Monday.
Monday, yeah.
And of course, it's often anniversaries that do spark people to seek retribution or hit out, unfortunately.
Kevin and Anita, we'll leave it there for now. But coming up next, Sir Keir Starmer pays back £6,000 in freebies, but will it make the controversy go away? We'll discuss that next.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent. I've reported from around the world and around the UK.
I'm Mark Stone, I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. And beyond the United States, from across the world, I report on the biggest stories.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I remember some of the worst of the violence here.
I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
They have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Kevin Maguire and Anita Boateng. OK, let's look at the front page of the Daily Mail. Starmer coughs up £6,000 to pay for his freebies, some of them those Taylor Swift tickets, of course, and his wife's clothes. Kevin, do you think that now that this payment has been made, maybe it could be the end of the controversy? No.
It's the glee of the Mail here. Talking about him being humiliated. It is humiliating. There's no question. It's gone from embarrassing to humiliating. Because when you've got to pay the £6,000 back, you're accepting you did wrong, and you know it's become an issue. But why they didn't see this earlier, coming down the track, when all the money was being given for clothes and so on, is completely beyond.
So you think the money should have been given back straight away?
I think it stuff shouldn't have been taken in the first place, actually. I'm not a purist. I don't say you can't take anything. And I know at Arsenal, the police have said he can't sit in his old seat. So he pays for his season ticket and then he sits in a better seat. It's got to be said. I don't personally object to that, but I think the clothes was a huge error. And because they were an error, he's had to repay these tickets. Others will say, why don't you repay for the clothes? Well, I think it's because it came from a Labour donor rather than an outside interest. Wahid Ali, Lord Penthouse, who's now under investigation for himself over whether he failed to register interests.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been a real embarrassment for the Labour Party, and I'm not entirely sure they've got a quite grip on what they're doing and saying now, even. I actually think, weirdly, that it is important for ministers and MPs and everyone to have a cultural hinterland. I actually think it's important to have, secretaries of state at the Brits and seeing these moments and going to theatre. I think I genuinely think that's an important part of
was it handled
doing your
badly
job.
then?
But I think that,
Scale.
it was partly they couldn't seem to sort of explain why they were doing this, and it felt a bit like, well, my teenage daughter quite wanted to see this, and I'm like, I don't think that's quite the story you should be telling, which is we should be celebrating our art. So I actually am more relaxed about that. I'm less relaxed about the Arsenal thing because I think you could probably just watch it from home. But,
You're not a football fan.
No, clearly.
You don't get to watch it from the stands, but you do get to be Prime Minister. I do also think that kind of, particularly the sort of £2,000 for glasses, I still continue to be. I still don't know how a pair of glasses cost quite that much, and I have some sympathy with.
I think there's several pairs, but I mean, there's still expensive glasses. I'm not.
I've seen different reports on this. I also think there are several moments where, from my perspective, it was clear that they had to come up with a better line than we followed the rules.
The problem is if you hammer the other lot as they did. Then you've got to be careful yourself.
We've got 45 seconds for the Tory leadership. Of course, they all spoke at conference. Who did well? Kevin?
Cleverly, I went. He's clearly come out best from that. I think Badenoch and Jenrick slipped back a bit, and Tom Tugendhat's just struggling to make his way.
Yeah, I think Cleverly definitely surprised and gave a kind of quite personal speech, which I think only he could have given. I think there was something unique about that, as much as Jenrick was very polished and Kemi was her usual direct and passionate self. So I think that he's the one that's got eyes on him tonight.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see. Kevin and Anita, thank you both so much. And now let's take a look at the weather. The next couple of days will be drier and calmer than recently, but the weekend looks wet and windy. There'll be a mostly dry, calm and sunny start tomorrow, but there will be frost and some fog in parts of the north and west and a few light showers near southeastern coasts. The UK looks mainly dry and sunny through the morning, although fog will take time to clear, but the southeast may catch the odd shower. Ireland will be mostly fine.